Hello again, my little conscripts, and welcome to another Warhammer 40k Mordian and Glory video. In today's episode, we shall be continuing to look over the 10th edition Imperial Guard Index. This time, taking a look at one of the most requested units I have had from the community. I don't think I've put a video out in the last month where someone hasn't said, Mordian and Glory, please can you request this tank? So you know what? I'm going to stop blueballing you guys. It's time for a deep dive on the Rogal Dorn battle tank. This absolute chonker of an armored unit was first introduced to the Guard in the 9th edition Codex. It very much is the new kid on the block in the motor pool. And it immediately became a very popular model in the Guard community. Why? Did it have really overpowered rules? Was it completely pushed and overtuned? No! If anything, it still played second fiddle to Leman Russ spam back in 9th edition, but people bought it because it was a big Makov tank. And there's nothing that the Guard community likes more than being able to add more metal boxes to their collections. However, we are several months on from release. The hype has begun to die down around the Dawn, and we're now in a new edition and we have a new set of rules to contend with. And the big question is the Big Chungus still in the Leman Russ's shadow, or has it emerged as the premier tank of the Guard? Well, there's only one way to find out. It's time to mount up, roll out, and dive right into today's video. Now, as is tradition, let us begin with a brief overview of what the hell the Rogal Dorn actually is. So normally in the section, I would talk about the lore and the background of the unit and how that would translate onto the tabletop. But with the Dorn being a pretty new unit, there's not actually much background material on it. So instead, what I want to do is explain its position within the Guard motor pool. So I would describe the Dorn as a very heavy tank. So in the Guard, you've got medium armor, which is your Hellhounds. These have got a decent amount of wounds, decent protection, but they tend to not have quite as much firepower as some of your other vehicles. You then move up to heavy tanks. These are your Leman Russes. These things are very durable and they've got good firepower, but they also have a pretty respectable price point. You can spam them if you need to. And then there's this sudden big jump up and you go to super heavies. You go to Baneblades, where you may field one of them, but they are not a particularly common sight on the tabletop. Often Guard players will bring them out for a fun game or if they want to meme a little bit, but they do bring an incredible amount of firepower. They are one of the few units that can level a flank single-handedly, but they're also going to take up over 25% of the points for your army list. Now, in the past, we didn't have an in-between. It was swarm with Leman Russes or take a super heavy. But now we have the Rogal Dorn, and it sits in between the heavy and the super heavy. It is, like I said, very heavy. And this new category of tank comes with its own set of advantages and disadvantages. And the best way to analyze those is by going over its datasheet. And let's begin by having a look at the Rogal Dorn stat line. The Dorn has a movement of 10. This is very nice. It puts it in line with the other Guard armor, and therefore it should be able to keep up and it's not going to get left behind. But then we start getting into the good stuff. The Dorn has a very spicy toughness of 12, and this is significant for one simple reason. It makes it noticeably more durable against proper anti-tank weapons such as las cannons. Leman Russes are all well and good. They're very tough and tanky, but the moment that a las cannon waddles into the club, it starts falling apart because it gets wounded on a 3+. But the Dorn, it only gets wounded by las cannons on a 4+. Now, based on my own experience and the stories that I've heard from many other Guard players, if you're wounding a Guard tank on a 4+, that is a risky business. back in 9th edition, I can't tell you the number of times when Harlequin players would come dancing and flipping up to my tanks and they start blasting fusion pistols into the side of them and they just wouldn't get the 4-ups. They wouldn't get what they needed. And so the Dorn having that T12 means that all of the other anti-tank weapons out there, like Melter, like Fusion, like Plasma, it's still going to win it on 5s, but now we have an actual chance of being able to just tank las cannons to the face. We then have a standard issue 2+ save, which is very nice, not going to complain about that. And after that, we move on to another spicy meatball. Probably the most exciting thing about the Dorn, in my opinion, is the 18 wounds. This is a lot of wounds. This is 7 more than a Hellhound. This is 5 more than a Russ. This is almost the same amount as a Macarius, which is technically a super heavy tank. It's only 6 less than a Baneblade. Okay, being sensible for a moment, the number of wounds the tank has is significant because more often than not, it means your opponent is going to have to pile the majority of their anti-tank firepower of a turn into this one tank to knock it out. And they haven't even got a guaranteed chance of doing this. I've used the Dorn a number of times now, and it surprisingly survives turn after turn after turn. I had one survive a Night Volcano Lance to the face. It always takes more than your opponent is expecting to kill it, and that is pretty much down to the raw amount of wounds this thing is coming with. What I really like about this is it pairs very well with the Tech Priest engines here, because you just need your Dorn to live on a couple of wounds, and then your Tech Priest can start repairing it, and it just becomes a never-ending nightmare for your opponent. And then we get to the tail end of the stat line with a totally unsurprising leadership value of 7+. I'm pretty certain every guard unit in the index, apart from the Commissar, has leadership 7+, and a pretty impressive OC of 5, giving it a not insignificant amount of objective control. Of course, this is a main battle tank, so it's not just bringing durability to the field, it's also bringing a ton of DACA. So let's dive into its weapon systems now. As standard, the Dorn comes equipped with the Castigator Gatling Cannon, Heavy Stubber, Twin Battle Cannon, and Armored Tracks. You can also give it a Oppressor Cannon and Coaxial Autocannon instead of its Twin Battle Cannon, and you can swap out the Castigator for a Pulverizer Cannon. On top of this, it can take a number of additional weapon systems. So you can give it 2 Melter Guns or 2 additional Heavy Stubbers. These are the infamous nipple guns that are on front of the tank, and it can also take a set of sponsons, either 2 Heavy Bolters or 2 Multi-Melters. Now, many of these weapons are pretty standard. These are normal Heavy Stubbers that you can find on almost any guard vehicle. Same for the Melter Gun, same for the Multi-Melter, same for the Heavy Bolter. Where things get interesting and unique is in the main turret weapons and that whole weapon as well. Where things get interesting though is in the unique weapons of the Dorn, and we'll begin with its most popular and most infamous gun, the Oppressor Cannon. This has the Blast Universal Special Rule, a very nice 72-inch range, pretty much anywhere on the board it can see, it can shoot. D6 plus 3 shots, giving it nice reliability. Ballistic Skill 4+, which might seem a little hit and miss, but don't forget you will be giving your Rogal Dorn the take aim order, so actually it's going to be hitting on a 3+ with most of its weapons. But the main tamale here is the fact that it is a very, very strong strength 12, AP -2, and damage 3. This profile makes it the perfect take all comers weapon. The fact that it's blast means that hordes are going to get slide down in respectable numbers. Strength 12 means that even heavy infantry is going to be wounded on 2s, and all but other very heavy armor is going to get wounded by 3s. Light, medium, and heavy tanks, including things like Russes, are going to be wounded on 3s from the oppressor cannon, making it a very, very good anti-tank weapon. And of course, AP-2 allows it to cut through the benefit of cover and still affect the enemy save. And flat damage 3 guarantees that every failed wound that you manage to slip past your opponent is going to sting and is going to tear a chunk out of his tank or insta-splat most of his infantry. Now, on its own, the oppressor cannon would be enough gun, but it comes with a coaxial autocannon as well. Now, this is a pretty mostly standard issue autocannon profile. It's got a 48 range, it's got 2 attacks, it's strength 9, AP-1, flat damage 3. It's the new autocannon of 10th edition. You know it, you love it. It's probably one of the best generic heavy weapons of the game right now. But there's a strange quirk about the coaxial autocannon because it has a ballistic skill of 3+. No, that's not with the take aim order, just as standard, it has a ballistic skill of 3+. Every other weapon on this thing hits on a 4+, but the coaxial autocannon hits on a 3. That means if you take aim on this thing, it hits on a 2. And for the longest time, I assumed that was a typo. In fact, if you go back and look at some of the early battle reports of 10th edition on this channel, you'll see me saying, oh, I assume it's typo, so we're going to run the coaxial autocannon as a ballistic skill 4+. But no, there have been a number of erratas and FAQs and adjustments to 10th edition already, and they've not touched it. They've corrected things like the Torox's frag missiles, they've clarified things to do with characters like Creed, but the coaxial autocannon stoically remains a ballistic skill 3+ weapon. So I can only assume that that is the way it's meant to work, which I'm not going to look a gift horse in the mouth. That's quite nice. But now let's move on to the other main weapon of Dorn, the twin battle cannon. Now, when this first came out in 9th edition, it was the clearly inferior option in almost every regard. It was swingier, it was less powerful, just wasn't even in the same league as the oppressor cannon. Now, I think that margin has closed. I think that gap is significantly closer. And I actually do think that the twin battle cannon has a place in your list now. So in terms of its profile, it's a standard issue battle cannon. It's blast, it's got a 48-inch range, D6 plus 3 shots, which is very nice. It used to be 2d6, now it's much more reliable, D6 plus 3, ballistic skill 4+, strength 10, AP-1, 3 damage. So now the oppressor cannon and the twin battle cannon have got the same reliability. Now they've got the same damage. Yes, the oppressor cannon has more AP, but you can compensate for that with the twin battle cannon by taking other support units like the exterminator, which would make it AP2, and you've also got lots of ways of ignoring cover with things like hellhounds, and you've also simply got fields of fire. The point I'm trying to make is it's not hard for the twin battle cannon to emulate the oppressor cannon. And on top of that, yes, it's only strength 10, but it is twin linked, which gives it full rerolls to wound on its main gun. Regardless of the target, you could be firing this into heavy armor. That twin linked is going to more than make up for the fact that you're wounding on 5s, or you could fire it into medium or light infantry and you're going to have full rerolls as well. Twin linked is a really, really powerful rule. And right now, I can't help but feel like the twin battle cannon option is suffering for the sins of its 9th edition incarnation. But in 10th edition, I think it does have some serious spice to it. However, it's not just the turret where bespoke weapon systems can be found. You've also got that hull weapon, and the Dorn comes with the Castigator Gatling Cannon as standard, and it's a pretty good weapon. It's a 24-inch range, it's got 12 attacks, ballistic skill 4+, strength 5, AP 0, damage 1. In many ways, it's like a miniature Punisher cannon that you can find on the Lehman Russ. In 9th edition, the Castigator was the clear winner because not only did it have a reliable number of shots, but it paired very well with the old Born Soldiers rule, where you always had essentially lethal hits by 10th edition standards. You didn't have to stay still to get it. But now you do have to stay still. and with the limited range of 24 inches, that's unlikely to happen if the Dorn wants to get all of its weapons into range. And then you take a look at the Pulverizer Cannon, which has started to benefit from a few other rules and a changing meta in 10th. So the Pulverizer used to be very swingy. It was just D6 shots and that was it. And that meant that you were worried about rolling a big fat stinking 1 when it came to the number of shots. But now it has Blast, which makes it much more reliable. And if we take a look at the rest of the profile, it's got a strength of 9, it's got an AP -3, it's got a damage of 3. What this means is it's much more punchy. We are entering a meta where knights are dominating, where vehicles are very prevalent. People are waking up to the fact that mech warfare is probably going to be the way of 10th edition. So the Castigator, in my opinion, is going to continue to become less relevant. And if I was to make a bold prediction of the future, I would say the Pulverizer is going to become the go-to weapon of the Dorn. But however you slice it, whatever weapons you prefer, the Dorn is rocking a lot of firepower. And I have 2 recommended loadouts, 2 ways I would run this thing. Either as a Dagger Dorn, where you take a turret of your choice and you take a whole weapon of your choice and then you load it up with all of the stubbers and heavy bolters, or you go for the Punchy Dorn, where again, turret of your choice, whole weapon of your choice, and then you focus on the melters and the multi-melters. I would not recommend you go, oh, I'll have stubbers and multi-melters, or I'll have heavy bolters and melter guns. Those weapons don't pair well together. Either go all melter on the accoutrement or go all dagger. Now, both of these options have advantages and disadvantages. The Dagger Dorn is my preference. And the reason for this is, yes, it is less punchy. It's hard to argue that a stubber is better than a melter gun when you look at the pure strength, AP, and damage. I get that. But the big advantage that the Dagger Dorn has is range. At the end of the day, the Rogal Dorn is a guard tank. It's not a close combat vehicle. Getting within 24-inch range to use the whole weapon is about as close as you want it to be in ideal circumstances. You want it to basically be hovering around the 18 to 24-inch mark, getting as many shots as possible, just hosing down the enemy and providing great fire support. If you do take the melter version, yes, you are going to be able to pop enemy tanks. Yes, you are going to be able to deal with those more durable units. Custodians are going to start worrying about you, but you're going to have to get within a 12-inch range to use your nipple melters. And for me, that's just a little bit too close for comfort. But wait, there's more, because not only does the Dorn have a shit ton of armor plating, and not only is it bringing a wild amount of firepower to the table, of course, it has an ability. I think every unit in 10th edition has an ability. And for the Rogal Dorn, it's a pretty good one. It has one special rule, ablative plating. Once per battle, when an attack is allocated to this model, you can change the damage characteristic of that attack to 0. This is an incredible ability, and it is no exaggeration when I say it has the potential to be game winning. Imagine your opponent lines up loads of his anti-tank, exposes a huge portion of his army to take out a Rogal Dorn or 2. And according to his calculations, he's done the statistics in his head, he knows he'll be able to take out both. Okay, it's worth the risk, sure. If it doesn't go off, he could be subjecting himself to one hell of a counterpunch, but he's got more than enough leveled against your armored core. That Wraith Cannon starts firing, and it goes to do a huge amount of damage, maybe even some mortal wounds, and you just go, sorry, that's 0 damage. And I could do that on every Dorn once per game. In that situation, your opponent will then fail to kill the units he wanted to and open himself up to being absolutely smashed in return. Now that is a best case scenario. More often than not, what's going to happen is your Dorn is going to survive an extra turn where it probably shouldn't have done, but the ability to blank damage is very, very good. Anyone that played against the old Votann knows that being able to just do a blank on such a big unit is very powerful. So the fact that Dorn has it built in, I don't even need to take anything like a supporting character, like a Rocket Forge Master or anything like that. It's just good. There's no other way of putting it. I keep saying it's very good, it's very powerful. It's just really, really nice. But there is a little bit of a caveat, and it is something that you need to be aware of if you're going to use this rule properly. You have to blank the damage before you know what it is, if it is a random shot weapon. If it's a fixed damage weapon, it's fine. But if it's random, you have to say, I'm going to blank that damage before you roll it. Because ablative plating kicks in when the attack is allocated. And attacks are allocated after a hit has been determined, a wound has been determined, and the opposing player has attempted to make a save. Then the attack gets allocated, and you then work out the damage for that attack. So you might end up blocking a las cannon that did 7 damage to you, or you might end up blocking a las cannon that did 2 damage to you. You don't know. You may never know. Your opponent might just go, oh, I'm not going to work out the damage then, it's fine. So it's a little bit risky. There's a bit of a game of cat and mouse. That is a decision to be made. But on the whole, I have found it's relatively intuitive when you know you should be popping the ablative plating. When someone comes in with something truly horrifyingly powerful, that's when you're like, I'm just not dealing with that. I'm not interacting with that. I'm just blanking it. And my Dorn is going to do a big old troll face against my opponent. And I know I am flogging a dead horse here. I'm really going on about this ablative plating, but there are multiple layers to it. And one thing that I am concerned about with the rule is its potential for it to become a gotcha. I think if you were playing honorably with your opponent and you saw what their plan was and you knew that they had probably forgotten about the ablative plating rule, I would personally go, yo, dude, just to let you know, I can blank damage once per game. And I can do it with this ablative plating rule, and I can do it on each tank. You may not want to do that in a top tier tournament setting. Maybe you tell your opponent at the beginning of the game, and then if they forget, and that's kind of their fault. But there is a potential for someone to gotcha you with it, to just go, oh yeah, it's my Rogal Dorn, and not mention it at all until it comes up, and then they can bamboozle their opponent with it. That, I think, would be a very negative way of doing it, and it would create a negative game experience. And whilst I respect how good the ablative plating rule is, I also am concerned that it could be used in a slightly toxic way. If you are going to use it, please use it fairly, and at the very, very least, give your opponent warning at the beginning of the game. And that, my fellow Guardsmen, covers everything on the Dorn's data sheet. But we haven't answered our question from the beginning of the video. Is the Dorn better than the Russ? Well, this is a controversial statement, but I think the Dorn might be the new go-to tank. Kinda. What do I mean by this? From a damage dealing point of view, the Dorn, in my opinion, is clearly superior to the Russ. Its oppressor cannon is very powerful. It stacks a huge amount of firepower onto a single chassis, and most importantly, I would say, in an era where orders do not splash out to other units, where one order goes on one unit, having fleets of Russes now is a bit of a liability. Often, you won't have all the orders you need to support your vast armadas of Russes. And so, as a result, I think triple Rogal Dorn is a genuine possibility now. It's a genuine, legitimate route to go down if you're looking to include lots of tanks in your Guard army. But whilst the Rogal Dorn is very good at shooting things, I think the Russ is still a totally valid unit, and also it is a superior support unit, especially when you're looking at things like the Lehman Russ Exterminator. Lehman Exterminator is an auto-include. You should be taking it in every decent Guard list. It is a massive force multiplier, and That is something that cannot be overstated. That is something that cannot be underestimated. So if you're looking for tanks to do direct damage and to just be big bricks, this is what the Dorn is now doing for you. That is where you should be looking. But when you want something that's either a little bit more specialist, do a specific job, or you want something that can act as a force multiplier, you need to start looking at the Leman Russ and its different variants. And let me be 110% clear here. I'm not saying the Russ is bad. If you're looking at your army collection and you're like me and you've got half a dozen Russes for your army and you're thinking, oh, well, Morty just says these are all useless, we're going to have to put them in the bin or put them on eBay. No, no, no. If the Rogal Dorn is a 9.5 out of 10, I'm not saying it is that high, but just bear with me. It's a 9.5 out of 10. The Leman Russ is a 9 out of 10. It's still a fantastic tank. And as long as you've got a good game plan for it, the Russ is not going to let you down. And we can't forget the fact that if you take 5 Leman Russes or 4 Leman Russes in a list and you lose 1, you've only lost 25% of your heavy armor. If you take 2 Rogal Dorns and you lose 1 of them, you've lost 50% of your heavy armor. So there is definitely an argument to be made for not having all your eggs in one basket, but I do think that the Dorn is tough enough that it's kind of worth the risk now. Of course, all of this is just like my opinion, man. Let me know what you think down in the comment section below. Are you Team Dorn? Is it time for the Russ, for the old man to get out of the way? Or do you think the Leman Russ is still the go-to tank? And if so, why? Of course, if you've enjoyed today's video, don't forget to smash that subscribe button like a Rogal Dorn is going to smash through the enemy front line. And also, subscribe to never miss an episode. And I just want to take a moment to say a massive thank you to all of the channel members and patrons. You guys are amazing. You truly are the lifeblood of the channel. And I couldn't do this full time without you. And I want to take a moment to say a special thank you to all of my top tier supporters. These are the War Masters, the people who have truly gone above and beyond the call of duty. So thank you so much to Alan Blunt III, Amy DeSweet, Bonbon Vert, Ken Starr, Mark Panconi, Ross Miller, Swordfish Trombone, John Stubbs, Nick Walsh, Diesel Fox, and August Varney. Once again, guys, thank you. Genuinely couldn't do this without you. Your incredible and generous support just makes a huge, huge difference. I hope you all enjoyed today's video. Thank you for watching. And of course, as always, I'll see you guys next time.